Hello and welcome to a new video. I'm going to do a couple of Halloween videos on the channel this October. Every year I tend to do something a little bit Halloween-y because I love Halloween and why not? And a lot of you seem to like those videos. I kind of range from either Halloween and plants or folklore and plants or just scary Irish things that are super interesting. And this year I'm going to do a series of 3 videos talking about those things. So the first video today, as you probably know from the title, I'm going to cover 10 plants that give me Halloween vibes. Some dark foliage, some texture, some spooky situations, plants that remind me of this time of year. So I have kind of a mix of plants that I own and plants that I do not own. So plants that I've come across or seen that just look spooky to me and are, to be honest, probably ones that I actually want to pick up. So in the spirit of Iha Hauna and all things scary, this October, let's go through some spooky plants. So the first plant is not one that I have in my collection, but is definitely one that I'd like to pick up. This is Begonia ferox. Now, Begonia ferox, I will put up a picture here while I'm speaking about it. Now, Begonia ferox is super interesting looking. It is like the definition of texture in a plant. It is spiky, it looks poisonous, the colors are wild, they look kind of sickly and it's just such an amazing plant. Now, I do have one textured begonia in my collection, and because I'm doing pretty okay with the care of it, I wonder would this one be okay for me. But it is one you might have seen before. It is native to China and was actually only discovered in 2013, which is very, very recent, and I cannot help but think about all the mad looking begonias out there that have yet to be discovered. It's a really interesting plant. It reminds me of, yeah, something that looks poisonous. I can imagine that if this plant, although it was just discovered, it may have been seen or observed by humans much earlier than this, and I wonder what the folklore of this plant would have been if it was like known. I can imagine it would have had a bit of a scary folklore behind it just because of the way it looks, and to be honest, with folklore and plants, that is kind of the way it tends to go. If something looks scary or poisonous or thorny or anything, it's usually associated with something Halloween-y, like the devil or poison or something like that. And I can't help but think of why this plant may have evolved this way. Maybe there is a pest or something that it is trying to protect itself from. The second plant on this list is one that I do have, and that is the wonderful Philodendron gigas. This plant is in a very wobbly stage of life. This is what it looks like. It's getting pretty tall now. This is the newest leaf. Why does this plant give me Halloween vibes? It's dark. It has these kind of almost lightning bolt-esque venation. It's velvety. It's just a really, really dark and deep color. If I can cover my face, it will focus on this. It just gives me, like, there's something about the shape of the leaves that give me kind of a gloomy, sad vibe. I don't know. That is why this is on the list. It is kind of one of those staple dark foliage favorites, I would say. This plant was discovered in 1997, so again, not that old, and is native to Panama. Is that scale or is that... we may need to treat this plant and take a closer look. Something very bizarre on the leaves there I've not seen. So it looks like a scrape, but there's these little black dots. I've just scraped some of them off. Not seen something like that before. It could easily just be a scrape. Anyway, this is just one up there. If you like this kind of look, this kind of deep, dark green, kind of spooky look, this is the perfect plant for that. So number 3 is definitely not one that I have, and definitely not one I would ever have the space for. You may know this plant as the corpse flower. This is Amorphophallus titanum. Don't know if I pronounced that correctly. This plant is super famous, and I think it's very clear why it's on the list. If you follow any botanical gardens out there, such as Kew and that one in the Netherlands, I can't remember the name of, you may have seen this plant flowering. So this plant produces this one absolutely massive flower, and it smells like rotting meat, which is why it's called the corpse flower. It smells like a corpse. It smells like rotting flesh, meat. Very clear reason why it gives me spooky Halloween vibes. And the reason it actually has this intense, disgusting odor is actually to attract pollinators that actually feed on carrion, that feed on rotting flesh and meat. There are certain types of beetles, carrion-eating beetles and flies, and they get attracted to the flower because of this stench, and they actually pollinate it, which is super interesting. This plant was actually first discovered in 1879, so it's been around for quite some time. That doesn't really surprise me because of its absolutely huge size. It would really stick out in a landscape, and it is native to Western Sumatra. It actually grows from these corms, which is kind of like a tuber. I believe it goes dormant for half the year as well, and then it just kind of wakes up and has this massive rotting flesh smelling flower, which is insane. I mean, the plant world is so insane sometimes, and this is a perfect example of that. Number 4 is a plant that you have seen on my channel recently if you've been keeping up with the videos, and that is because it is a begonia. There's a couple of begonia on this list because it is one of the largest flowering plant genera ever. There's a lot to choose from, and this plant was featured in my recent begonia tour, and that is Begonia Black Fang. So it is so dark that the camera even has a bit of trouble focusing on this plant, but I mean, this is the definition of Halloween for me, and probably the plant in my collection that makes me think the most about that time of year. It just is Halloween vibes. It has green veination, it has spiky leaves, it is hairy, it has kind of a spirally shape that seems to draw you into the center of the leaf, which is very interesting. It also has these beautiful red petioles, and the backs of the leaves are amazing. If it can focus on that, it is so beautiful. One of my favorite plants. I've had this for quite some time. I won't go on about it because I literally have just spoken about this plant on the channel, but that is for sure in the list of plants that give me Halloween vibes. This is a cultivar of the Begonia rex species, which is also known as the painted leaf begonia, and there are thousands, countless cultivars of Begonia rex out there in the world today. But the original Begonia rex was first discovered in 1857 and is native to Bhutan to Myanmar kind of region. So that is her. Number 5 is a particularly interesting plant. Now, I have no idea if this would do well indoors or not. It is not one that I have. And this is known as the Darth Vader flower. And I'm gonna have to read this name because it is difficult. Aristolochia salvadorense. It was first discovered in 1923 and is native to Guatemala down to El Salvador, hence the name salvadorense. And apparently the eyes of these flowers are kind of traps for pollinators, that they get drawn into it, they get trapped inside and they pollinate it. So they literally get trapped into the dark side of this flower. It looks really amazing, and it would be one that I think would look so amazing in someone's collection and trailing up the walls maybe. A very beautiful plant, and of course had to be included due to its connection with the dark side. The next plant on the list is quite a common one, a plant that I've had for quite some time now, and a plant that I don't think I will ever get rid of. The beautiful, the amazing, the Zamioculcas zambifolia raven version. So a ZZ plant, very, very common, very widely owned in the plant community. And this is the black leaf version of that plant. I love black leaves. I just think, look how glossy they are. That's the newest leaf that's come out. It does not grow very fast. It's stayed pretty compact for me over the years. It's been in this pot for quite some time. Probably needs to be repotted, to be honest. The leaves of this, they actually emerge green and they slowly turn black, which is something that I just love to watch. I think it looks so cool. It almost looks like the leaf is being poisoned or it's taken over by some spell or something, and I guess that's why it's on the list for me, apart from the fact that the leaves are actually black. It's a very gothic kind of plant. It's just so beautiful, and you love it in this dark terracotta that is slowly turning white because it's so old. But yeah, it's a staple favorite of mine. This plant is native to kind of dry tropical regions, which is why it's so easy to care for, because it just likes a bit of neglect. It likes being dry. First discovered in 1905 and is native to Kenya and South Africa. So, and obviously that's the green version of this plant. I don't think this cultivar would be present in the wild, but it is nonetheless a really beautiful plant. It has quite thick tubers, which allows it to go long periods without water. The next plant is one that I actually only came across from researching for this video, some spooky plants. And when I tell you, I went into the biggest rabbit hole of the internet regarding this plant. I just could not believe what I was reading, and I found it so interesting. And of course, because of that, this plant is pretty freaking high up on my list to find, and that is Nepenthes hemsliana. I have a Nepenthes care tips video on my channel, and I don't have a lot of them. I have pretty much just two. Yeah, I only have 2 plants of Nepenthes in my collection, but they're pretty up there with my consistent favorites. I find them endlessly interesting and love to read about this genus. It's just like the pinnacle to me of interesting plants. So Nepenthes hemsliana. If you don't know, I am an ecologist. I work often with bats, and bats are a huge passion and favorite of mine in the environment, I guess. And I probably would put it up there as my 2 favorite things in life are plants and bats, to be very honest, when it comes to like interests and stuff like that. And this plant merges those 2 like so damn perfectly. So Nepenthes hemsliana has evolved to eat bat poo and bat guano. This is insane to me. So Nepenthes are carnivorous or insectivorous plants. They grow in low nutrient type habitats, and so they need to get their nutrients from something else, which has resulted in them evolving to have these pitchers that have kind of digestive fluids inside them. And these pitchers generally catch insects. There are some species that catch like detritus or like leaves and stuff like that, and can digest this to get their nutrients. So Nepenthes hemsliana has evolved to get its nutrients from bat poo, and that is because the woolly bat lives inside the pitchers. This plant was first discovered in 1908 in Borneo, and the woolly bats were found to be living inside the pitchers. Now, the pitchers have evolved to have very little liquid inside them in terms of digestive fluids, and have actually formed and shaped themselves to fit the bats perfectly inside there. And one incredibly interesting thing is that the kind of dish that goes on top of the pitcher has actually evolved into a parabolic shape that aids in the echolocation of the bat to actually find the pitchers. So it kind of is curved, and it indicates to the bat that it is close to the pitcher, which helps the bat to find it. And if you don't know, bats kind of move through the landscape using something called echolocation, which I guess can be described as similar to sonar, where they send out a signal and they get it back, and that's how they understand where things are in their environment. So this to me is just like absolutely insane, so cool. I love plants and I love bats. If there isn't anything more Halloween than a carnivorous plant that has evolved to house bats, I mean, that is amazing. The next plant on the list I've also had for quite some time, but I think that, I don't know what was going on with the care for this plant, but it was not doing well for the longest time. I almost got rid of it a few times, but this year it's really taken off. And it is Philodendron erubescens black cardinal. So this is what it looks like. In terms of philodendrons, it's quite a compact shape in the way that it grows. It doesn't really grow like up and have big internodal spacing or anything. It's more kind of like a shrubby growth habit. But look at those leaves. They are shiny, they are dark, kind of a blacky green, and the petioles and new leaves come in this very deep wine red kind of color, and it is so cool looking. I absolutely love it. Very clear why it's in this video, dark foliage, spooky vibes. It is a cultivar of Philodendron erubescens, and erubescens was first discovered in 1855 and is native to Columbia region. There are quite a few cultivars of erubescens. There's kind of ones that are orange and other colors, but it's a really cool plant and I love it. The next plant on the list is actually also known as the corpse flower. So we have the big corpse flower, the Amorphophallus, and then we have this one, which is known as Rafflesia, not sure, Arnoldii. This is the largest individual flower known on Earth. They are known to grow up to 1 meter in diameter, and they look absolutely crazy. I mean, this looks sickly, it looks poisonous. It also emits a disgusting smell, which again attracts pollinators such as carrion-eating beetles and flies, and so that is why it emits this pungent smell to attract these insects to pollinate it. But on top of that, what is crazy interesting about this plant and different to the Amorphophallus corpse flower is that it's actually parasitic. So this plant actually requires vines of some other plants. I think they mentioned grape vines actually. And it has to be a parasite on those vines in order to survive and create this flower, which is just a whole other layer of interesting. We've got parasites, we've got rotting flesh, we've got beetles and flies. Halloween vibes. The final plant on this list is one that I have in my collection, and that is the Philodendron atabapoense x Beatiae hybrid. And it is too big to show in the frame. It has like the longest area root going on here, which is insane. So this is the plant. Yeah, I mean, this is why it's in the video. It has kind of these amazing it has deep lobes. They're not pointy, they're slightly rounded, but the end of the leaf is pointy. The leaves are dark. The backs of the leaves have that atabapoense color, the kind of wine dark color. And I mean, it does remind me of Halloween. It looks spiky, kind of reminds me of swords somehow. And it's absolutely beautiful. It is quite heavy. It is absolutely beautiful, and it just has the look. There's nothing really else to say about this plant other than it has dark foliage and it has that Halloween gothic-y look to me. And just some background info on that plant. It is a hybrid of Beatiae and atabapoense. Beatiae was first discovered in 1995 and is native to the Guianas and Brazil region, and the atabapoense was first discovered in 1975, a little bit earlier, and is native to Venezuela and the Amazonia region. So that concludes 10 plants that give me Halloween vibes, dark foliage favorites, whatever you want to call it. So if you like dark foliage, gothic plants, plants that have kind of a effed up evolution, or just super interesting evolution, spooky spooky things about your plants, then this is a great list to start from. A lot of these plants are quite common and easily accessible in terms of getting plants. A lot of the ones that I showed that I have in my collection, none of these are really expensive or difficult to get. And of course, the other plants that I listed that I don't have would be a little bit more difficult, I think, in terms of care indoors, particularly the corpse flower ones. I don't think they're just not meant for that. So that concludes the first video in my kind of October Halloween series. I hope that you enjoyed it. The next video is going to be on some scary plant folklore. I think it's very interesting. So if you like those folklore type of videos, look out for that. It's coming up next. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I just would like to give a special shout out to my lovely patrons for supporting me this month. Thank you so much to Michael, Amy, Grace and Yendi. Thank you so much for your support this month. It truly means the world to me. If you are interested in signing up to my Patreon, the link is on the screen and it is also listed in the description of all my recent videos. And you can check out all of the bonus content and perks available for each tier. Thank you so much for watching this video. Iha hauna, happy Halloween, and I will see you very soon in the next video. Bye!